This is the OMG Book Show with William O'Day, episode number 25.
Welcome to the OMG Book Show, where it's all about taking you into the brains of fantastic authors. No scalpels required. It's more than an interview, it's an experience. And now, your host, William O'Day.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. Today, we have a very special show with a rock star of indie publishing. His name is Craig Martelle, and he is a mover and shaker in the indie publishing space, along with his partner in crime, Michael Anderle. And FYI, I don't think they're actually criminals. They both seem to be very nice guys. And in the interview today, Craig talks with us about the first book he ever wrote and what happened to it once it got into his sister's hands. It's a tragedy, ladies and gentlemen, so bring your tissue. He also talks with us about why he didn't get a Marine Corps tattoo. It makes a lot of sense. You'll have to hear it in the interview. He also goes into collaboration because that seems to be a big part of how his business works. One with Michael about books and also the conventions. And that's another huge thing. Near the end of the show, we go into all of the conventions that Craig and Michael and the other folks at 20 Books to 50K are putting together for us, those of us on the writing side of the business. And one of those is the one in Vegas coming up, but there's also ones coming up in other areas. So he talks with us a bit about that and how they all came together. And Craig talks with us about his busy schedule and how he kind of keeps it all together, because he has got a lot of things going on between all of the writing and the convention planning. So that's the professional side of things. We also get into the personal side of things because, you know, that's one of the things I love to do on this show. Craig lives in Fairbanks, Alaska, which I have never been to, but sounds pretty cool. And I would like to go to someday. So he tells us a little bit about that. And we talk about the World Ice Art Championships and the 40 Below Club. You'll have to find out about that because that sounds both like a lot of fun and extremely dangerous, like you could die. And he actually tells us about a particular time where he, in his words, or I think if I'm paraphrasing here, came within about 15 seconds to dying himself in extreme cold. So we hear the story behind that. And the Rorschach test for this interview, I have to say, is the most Rorschach-ian answers I have ever heard thus far. So you will get to hear those and be entertained just as I was. And one last thing here, we hear about the answer to life, the universe, and everything as posited by Douglas Adams. And if you haven't read those books, I won't tell you what the answer is. You will hear it in the interview. But Craig actually goes in and talks to us about what the meaning behind that, where that answer came from. And I don't think I had ever heard it, but it's a really cool little factoid kind of behind the covers, behind the pages of the book there. So there's all that and much more on the interview today. But before we get started, you may have heard in previous episodes how I've described that my daughters have latched onto a show called Liv and Maddie. And anyway, they go around the house saying Bam What, which they have appropriated from that show. And so I challenged my daughters to a Bam What contest. And you, ladies and gentlemen in the audience today, or whenever you listen to this, whatever day that is, you get to be the judge. So I will play for you just a short snippet of each of us. We're going to start with oldest to youngest. So that's me first, and then Soji in the middle, and then Viva at the end. Each of us doing our own best version of Bam What. And you will be the judge of who turns it out best. I'm hoping you pick me. Bam what?
Bam what? Bam what?
All right, so there are each of our respective Bam Whats. Who did it best? You be the judge. And you can record your vote at the show notes location, which is www.williamoday.com/ the number of the episode, which is 25. Seriously, my daughters want to know who did it best. So without further silliness or ado, let's get to the interview. Surgical gloves on, metaphorical scalpel in hand. Let's get started. His name is Craig Martelle, and he is joining us today. Craig, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, great to be on the show, Will. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. And, being that you are a rock star of the indie movement, I wanted to find out, I see you travel a lot and do conventions and things of that nature. Have you totally destroyed any hotel rooms yet?
I have not, but guitars are not safe anywhere near me.
Is that because you play horribly or you like to smash them to pieces?
It's because I don't play at all, man. We just bang on the strings and make things happen.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fun. We used to have, we still have a drum in this house, but we used to have two drums in my house. And I think just one afternoon on a weekend, I got a little too excited about it and pounded it so hard, I ended up just slicing through the little film or skin on top or whatever.
Jeez.
And yeah, so I think maybe we could be in the same band together.
You bet, man. You bet.
The way we usually start out the show is to get a little bit of background on you and your life and how you came to writing. And maybe I can prompt this particular instance of it because I read somewhere that way long time ago, many years ago, you back in 8th grade, you had written your first book and your sister lost it or destroyed it or something. Could you go back with us there and tell us what happened?
Yeah, I hand wrote it. I wrote it on a number of notebooks and stuff while we were on vacation one summer. So in 2 weeks, I wrote my first book. And at that point in time, my target was 30,000 words. And so I wrote a story of more than 30,000 words handwritten. Wow. And it was scattered everywhere, right? And I edited. So there was writing in the margins and scratch outs and things like that. And my sister was studying to be a secretary at the time. And she had her own typewriter to practice on. And my mom said, type this book up for him so he can submit it to publishers.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And my sister typed the first page, and then she didn't like the story. It was science fiction. So needless to say, she waffled and waffled. And then years went by. I joined the military. And here's how life happens. So I joined the military, and like one day later, my parents moved.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They sold the house and moved after I left. So
were they waiting? Were they like, all right, as soon as Craig's out, we're out of here?
That's right. I was the youngest. I think that was the deal. This house is too big. There's no kids. We had 4 kids. So yeah, they moved. And so needless to say, they downsized, and anything left laying around was summarily removed to the dump. So, right. They sold my car, and I had nothing left after. So I went in the military, and when I came back, I had the clothes on my back when I graduated from Marine boot camp. So I built up from there.
Did they, with all the things of yours that they sold and didn't incinerate, did you at least come back to like a nice stash of cash from all of that, like your car and such?
No, it was my dad's car. He got it for me for my 16th birthday. So no, I didn't need any money from that because I was always a big fan about making my own way.
Right.
And now all of my wargaming stuff and that kind of thing, my paperback collection of Robert Heinlein novels and Robert E. Howard, that stuff was set aside. So I did have that stuff. None of my clothes. I mean, my clothes they were all high school stuff and really weren't what a budding Marine would wear. So, because I needed to improve my collection of Party Till You Puke T-shirts.
Right,
so
right,
that's,
of course.
And hardcore Marine Corps T-shirts.
Yeah, you definitely need at least 3 Devil Dog shirts and, Semper Fidelis.
I did not get the obligatory tattoo, though. I went through a whole Marine Corps career and did not get a tattoo.
Oh, I thought that was part of the indoctrination. Like my wife's dad was a Marine, and he, of course, had the big devil dog on his side of his arm there. Yeah.
No, I was in Marine Corps intelligence, though, and they told us that, hey, if you ever get a tattoo, you can't go undercover or do other things behind enemy line kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I didn't. And that did benefit me because I did get to do a little of that fun stuff.
Well, do you have, and this is not a question that we normally ask on this show, but do you have any other cool tattoos perhaps?
I did get one later, right before I retired, but no, and it's not cool at all. It's just a couple kanji on my back, and that's it.
Would you? Is it okay to share what the kanji stands for on the show?
Oh, absolutely, but I'm not going to.
I like your sense of intrigue. Okay, well, getting back to the book in 8th grade. So your sister typed up the first page and summarily quit the job. What happened? Was that the end of it? Did it ever go anywhere after that?
It disappeared. That manuscript is gone forever.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Do you care at all? Is there a side of you that's like, it'd be fun just to see what it's like, now from my perspective here?
No. Considering that I went through an entire adult life, I got a college degree, graduated summa cum laude, did a Marine Corps career, got a law degree, graduated summa cum laude, considered myself pretty smart. And I look back at the book I wrote 2 years ago as opposed to 40 years ago, and I'm appalled. So no, I really don't want to look at something I wrote in 8th grade and say, oh, my God, I am glad that didn't see the light of day.
Yeah.
I tell you, though, that I still remember that story very, very vividly.
I think I know where you're coming from because not that I did it the exact same way, but I do recall like from high school doing a short story about somebody shopping in a grocery store. And of course, there was the obligatory what I thought at the time was the height of comedy. Some guy sampling cantaloupes and mentioning melons in a suggestive way. And I'm happy like you, I think maybe that I have never seen it again because I would feel really terrible about myself.
Yeah, you'd be appalled. Oh my God. And that's my real name. My God.
I know, right? So so that 8th grade book is long past in history. When did you jump into writing as a career so many years later?
I served a Marine Corps career and I retired. And then I went and got a law degree, and then I served in a business consulting capacity for long enough, 7 years. I traveled an awful lot, but I made really, really good money. So finally, I'm like, I was tired of being on the road. And also I was working on the North Slope of Alaska, which is well inside the Arctic Circle.
Wow. Okay.
And the weather was so damn brutal. And I was looking at yet another winter up there. And I'm like, it's time. It's time to retire for good and just be home. So I came home, and heaven forbid, I can't sit still. So I'm like, hey, let me go clean up the yard. Let me make that burn pile and take care of it. And I lit myself on fire. So I
oh no,
I stop, drop, and roll. All right, hey. But I did get some really nice 2nd-degree burns on one of my legs, and I decided that I can't do that kind of stuff. But I still need to do something. I'm a busy mind, and I'm like, I always wanted to write a book. Now it's time. Sit down. I've got the time. Sit down and write the book. And so I started full time on October 4th of 2015, and 61 days later, because I track everything, because that's a business diagnostics specialist in me. 61 days later, I had a 100,000 word book.
Man, that's huge.
Yeah. My initial goal was 1,000 words a day. And there were times I didn't meet it. And this is me writing full time, sitting at the desk, looking at the screen, and still I couldn't meet that goal. And that reinforces a point about running a marathon. If you want to write a book and you're struggling, you set that goal. And even if it's only 100 words a day, I believe John Grisham started that way. His goal was only 100 words a day because he had a full-time job. And eventually you look at it and all of a sudden, hey, you've got a story going. And as you get into that story, you find that 100 words is one paragraph. And now you can do a full page. That's 300 words. And then all of a sudden you're doing 3 pages and 5 pages. And then 1,000 words really was no big deal. And by the end of that 61 days, I actually had a 10,000 word day. Wow. Because the story was flowing so well.
That's amazing. And I totally agree with you about the marathon aspect of it too. There's, everybody has their own process, but for me at least, and it sounds like you probably would agree, if you're the type that jumps in and you write like 6,000 words in a day, but then you just are emptied out and, then you let life and everything else get in the way and then you don't get back to it for 2 weeks, that kind of stutter start sort of approach won't be nearly as productive as the really small increments, just very regularly over time.
I am a huge fan of writing every single day. I think you do need to, because if you're a writer, you write.
Yeah.
And especially as a full-time author, I have no excuse not to get a few words down every single day. And I edit. Editing is something different. It's a different mindset. Marketing is a completely different person. So you have to step out of I'm an author and an artist body, put on your new body and your new hat, and then go market. That's different because you don't want to tell people about your story. You want to tell people to get them excited about your story.
Right.
So, hey, look at these 10 steps to accomplish something really spectacular. I can't believe number 7. I mean, how many times have we clicked on that stupid stuff because it had a neat picture on it?
Right.
But that's a different mindset. So you have to have these multiple personas, and one of them is your author persona. And I think you need to write every day. It's a great habit to get into. And also you keep taking those small steps, and then you find at the end of a year, 2 years, 5 years, hey, I can run a marathon now. I'm not setting world records, but I can run a marathon, which in my mind, that's write an entire book. It's not write 10,000 words in a day. I try not to do that anymore. Of course, I say that as I wrote 22,000 words in 28 hours just a week ago. Well, because I committed. I went to GaryCon and I committed to writing a book during the show. So I ran the game on Thursday, and by Friday afternoon, I actually had the book done. So it was a part of a challenge, part of a commitment, and I really don't want to do that again. I didn't really burn out because it was a great story. It was fun, and we had great people there, and I got to shake hands with a lot of really good people from my past. So it's okay, but that's not what I'm talking about with a marathon. A marathon is you start something, you run 26.2 miles, and you finish. It's not that you have to set a record, but there's so many people write a book, see a squirrel, and then start writing a new book. And a bunch of half books will get you nothing.
Right.
Finish that book and before you move on. If I have a point of clarity where I'm thinking about another book, what I'll do is I'll drop out and write that entire story start to finish. It might be just 1,000 words, and then this happened, and then this happened, and here's some witty dialogue, and here's a scene that has to happen, and this. So you look at it, and it's almost incomprehensible, but it is to me. It makes sense. 1,000 words. I've written up to 10,000 words on an outline, and I am a confirmed pantser who now outlines because I don't have time to sit there and waffle and think about a scene. I need to write it. So when I have those moments of clarity, I write that outline, and then I get back to whatever book I'm writing then, because I now have an outline and a way to go. Right. And my production, people thought I wrote fast before. My production has doubled. I've for the last week, this is day 9 of having the flu B. I have written almost 30,000 words in 9 days while having the flu.
Wow, that's amazing. I hope you get to feel better soon. You sound good. Are you just are you on the tail end of it?
I am. I took because as soon as I got back from the show last week, I went to the doctor and got Tamiflu and some cough syrup, some special cough syrup, and have been staying inside. So resting, but that's at my desk. I'm staying warm, drinking plenty of fluids, and writing and working because at least my mind was clear. This was flu B. I had flu A back in November, and that one destroyed me. I spent 2 weeks pretty much on the couch binge watching Babylon 5.
Well, I guess it was a good reason to do that.
Oh, time well spent.
Well, I wanted to, things you'd gone over there, I wanted to touch on a couple of them. First is, so you obviously have a very regular writing practice. And it sounds like the flu might have been one of the times where you had a break. When things like that happen, do you find it difficult to get back into that routine of writing every day or no? No. Yeah.
It's what I like. I like to write. I like to tell a story. I like to disappear into that world.
Very cool. And then I wanted to touch a little bit further back on that first book that you finished in the 60 days, over 100,000 words or so. How did you, at the end of it, did you feel like, okay, this is a completed book, or did you look back at it and be like, oh, this is a mess. Let's try something else again?
What I did was I set it aside and I wrote another book. The first book took 61 days. The second book took 28 days. But the second one was a space adventure in a completely different genre. The first book was survival post-apocalyptic. So I set it aside because I'm like, hey, I'll edit it with a fresh mind. And I wrote the other book, and then when I went back to it, I'm like, hey, this isn't bad. It actually reads pretty well. However, I stopped mid-sentence. I had so many typos. And I always consider myself a smart person. And I read back through that, and I'm like, no, I'm really an idiot. Because I look at these. How can you write a sentence with like multiple misspellings, the grammar, you have present tense here, past tense here. What the hell are you doing? You're a moron. So I was going through that, and it was extremely painful. And I'm like, no, this is work harder, not smarter. So I pounded my head against the wall, and I read that 100,000 word book probably 20 times over the next month and a half.
Wow.
As I'm trying to edit it. And finally I'm like, I just can't look at this thing anymore. What do I do now? And I tried. I was on K-boards, and I was trying to get help, and people were, I got a bunch of grief. Like, hey, that's a horrible cover. And I'm like, okay, never mind. I'm just going to publish. And so I hit publish on it and put it on Amazon, and I sold about 50 copies, of which I think my dad bought 49 of them.
Oh, that was sweet of him.
My dad is awesome. So I started publishing my other books, and those actually resonated better because I'm a science fiction guy. So science fiction stuff, it's my people. And somebody, an author that I connected with online, said, "Oh, hey, there's this publisher who is looking to expand out of zombies but still post-apocalyptic." And I'm like, cool. Hey, I just happen to have a book, and I sent it to Monique Happy. And she took a look and said, hey, it's a good story, but it needs edited. Okay, I knew that. It needs a new title. I'm like, okay, I'll buy that. It needs a new cover. Okay, I'll buy that. But outside of that, it's a good story. And, it's too long because this genre, about 50,000 words, is a sweet spot. So it's 100,000 words. We can split it in half, but you need to punch it up a little bit. You need to add some volume to each of those two. And, hey, I signed the contract, and now I'm a hybrid author. I have a traditional publisher, Permuted Press, publishes End Times Alaska. They said you got to have Alaska in the title because it's Alaska Survivalist, and you live in Alaska. It worked very, very well, and actually that series became a bestseller in August of 2016.
Very cool.
In the post-apocalyptic genre. Yes. They published I took that first book, split it in two, added a third book, and then after that signed a new contract to add a fourth book. And it's now a 4-book series. You can find it in Barnes & Noble. So being a hybrid publisher, no, it doesn't pay as well as being an indie self-published where I get all the royalties. It's still, there's a lot of value in having somebody else looking at your work and promoting your work and doing those good things that partners do. And Permuted has treated me very well as part of the partnership. And all of those 4 books are now audiobooks as well.
Yeah, that's very cool. And did working with a traditional publisher, did that help in the sense of how you understood the editing process, or not so much? Yes, it did. But I'd like to think, because they paid a single editor to do something, to do a 2-pass edit, which was very good. Now, my process now, I have multiple editors as well as a proofreading team and the beta readers. I say that I have the best beta readers on the planet, and I truly believe that because I will give them a book today and they will have feedback to me today. Wow.
And all of them, 100% of them will give me feedback, and they'll all find something that the others didn't find.
Yeah.
It's really weird because if they each find 10 out of the 10 people, there will be 90 unique typos that they found.
Yeah. It's
really odd how they can not see things that somebody else sees, and they're not coordinating. They're each reading the book individually. And that is so important because I hate publishing books with typos. And the book that I wrote in 28 hours, it still does have some typos, and I need to jump in there and find those and clean that up because I don't want it to stay out there with those typos in there. Not that I'm a perfectionist. Perfection is the enemy of good because only the readers can define if this book is perfect for them, and every reader is unique.
Right.
But there's some things you just can't abide by, like your having those wrong. it's not wrong. It's a typo, even though when they're reading it, hey, that's wrong, as opposed to your Hunter from the Future, which is something completely different.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that. I think, having editors look over your work, they may have a higher bar because it's something or they may not, but let's say they do have an higher bar, but they will still miss things. If you give, the same book like you're talking about to two different editors, it's like a Venn diagram. Maybe there's 80% the same, but 20% they each caught unique things like you're talking about.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I think we're alluding to something here. You have so many projects going on, and I wanted to ask you about kind of where this sort of and collaboration sounds like a big thing. And did it start with Michael Anderle and what's going on with the Cthulhu series, or was there partnerships before that?
It started with Michael because he knew I had written a post-apocalyptic series because I was very active on the 20 Books Facebook group that he started, 20 Books to 50K. And my books, I had post-apocalyptic and I had space adventure that was still had a post-apocalyptic slant to it. And I'm retired from the Marine Corps. He knew that. And so he sent me an email in, I think, September of 2016 saying, hey, I wrote myself into a corner. I've got a character. And then I jump 150 years on Earth, and I need to cover that 150 years. Would you be interested in writing this character, taking this character and filling that time gap? I said, I didn't say yes right away. I said, hey, let me think about that. Let me look at what I need to do. I think I can start it in January or February because I've got these commitment on books. And I was very prolific and actually finished my 4-month worth of work 2 months early. And so I started that book in middle of November and wrote it, and we dropped it the week before Christmas 2016. The way the process worked was I wrote the first 5,000 words, sent it to him. He punched it up, added some text, added some three-dimensionality, which was very important to me, a great learning point. Because you'll see something, a character will look at another character. What do you smell? What are you thinking? What other things are going on? The wind moved her hair. Those things that add depth to the scene.
Okay, like describing the senses and that kind of thing.
Incorporating the senses, yes, because everything can be looks, and it's so easy, looks and dialogue, and that's a 2-dimensional view of the world.
Right.
But if you incorporate that depth of maybe a scowl added here or there when somebody doesn't agree with something that was said, as opposed to, oh, I said this, and then the answer is I don't agree. Well, you don't even need to say I don't agree. He scowled. Okay, he probably doesn't agree, and that's a good place to put the reader into. That we found, and Michael's readers really liked that sensual depth of the scenes. So he helped me better do that, and that has helped my writing overall. So 5,000, and I sent him 10,000 words, and then I sent him 15, and he's like, dude, just write the whole book and then send it to me when you're done. Because I was sending him like 5,000 words every day or every 2 days, and he's like, I can't keep up. Just write the whole book, and then we'll take a good look at it then. And we did. And then all of a sudden he's like, hey, give me your author notes. And I hadn't been doing author notes before then. I'd been doing the traditional publisher way of, oh, Craig is an author from Alaska. Nah, it's crap. Just talk to the reader. The readers are there. They want to hear from you. So, hey, readers, thanks for reading. I appreciate you picking up my book. I'm glad if you've made it this far, that means you read the whole story, and that makes you an awesome human being. I hope you like this picture of a moose. And that kind of stuff goes a long ways because you're making that personal connection with the people who have spent $4 or $5 of their money and 6 or 8 hours of their life to join you. So I don't think we can express our appreciation enough.
Right.
And that is one of Michael Anderle's gifts, is that he makes every reader feel like they are personally connected to him. And so, I did. And I'm like, okay, hey, I did my author notes. He's like, hey, we're going to publish tomorrow. Sounds good, huh? I'm like, yeah, that sounds good to me, man. And there we are.
Was this the first Terry Walton book or Bad Company or which?
It was Nomad Found, the first Terry Henry Walton book. And that was, I don't know, some 300 grand in royalties ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congratulations.
I was surprised, and I was so happy that first week it sold maybe $3,000, $4,000 worth. And I was ecstatic. I'm like, oh my God, look at these numbers. Well, that's, yeah. And Michael, I think he said, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is a great story. Keep writing like this, improve, and keep improving. And you're going to find that my fans are going to become your fans. They're going to be fanatical and like Terry Henry Walton just for what Terry is. He'll become your character. And then all of a sudden, they'll be beating down your doors asking, hey, where's the next book? Where's the next book? And no kidding. It took like 2 books is all. And then they're like, hey, where's the next book? Where's the next book?
Well, it's good you live in Fairbanks, right? Because at least your door is far away. So it takes a while for people to get there.
Oh, we live way off the beaten path. So yeah, nobody has shown up. However, I do have a fan base right here in Fairbanks, which was crazy to meet people. And they're like, oh, I read your stuff. You run into people. It's really weird and humbling too, that somebody can know who I am. And I have no clue. I'm generally just me. I'm here. I don't go out much, and it's just what it is. And then all of a sudden, hey, I like your stories.
I was wondering where you run into these people. Do you have a local bookstore there?
Yes, Barnes & Noble, local. The manager is a big fan, and God bless her. And I really appreciate that. She's so kind always. And I'll go in and I'll sign books for her. And actually, I haven't been there in a while. They have N×4. I need to go sign their copies.
That is super cool.
Because then they put a sticker on front, hey, say author signed. So I will sign. And they carry all my books, which is really cool because I publish through CreateSpace. So they can't return them. And I told the manager, I'm like, oh, man, if you get stuck with the books, I'll buy your extra inventory.
Right.
And she said, it's no problem. We sell all of your books.
That is totally cool. And did you go to them to try to like get this thing going, or you just walked in and you had some books and it all came together? How'd that work?
Oh, dude, it was crazier than that. We were going to go to get a pizza. Papa Murphy's is right next door, take and bake. And my wife's like, hey, I want to go in and check their cookbook section. So, hey, cool. So we go in there and she's like, oh my God, look, they had 2 of my books on the counter.
Wow.
On display.
Was there like a display of like local writer, Craig Martelle, or anything like that? What was the draw for them?
It was a local writer. I mean, they knew that part, but it was one of my other books as well. And they're up on the counter on one of those 3-dimensional displays. I'm like, holy cow.
Wow, that's very
cool.
So
I stopped by. I'm like, hey, that's me. Ah, great. Can we do this? Can we do a signing? Can we? I thought that was so incredible that that they put not just there, but it was up on display. I hear that to get the that front stand at Barnes & Noble, it costs traditional publishers like $100,000 that they'll pay Barnes & Noble to put James Patterson's books or Nora Roberts or J.D. Robb. Those books, when you first walk in, that first counter, that's the first stand, that's what they pay to get people to get those books front and center in every Barnes & Noble. And here, if you walk in 2 stands further, there's my books on display. I thought that was so cool. It's hard to beat that. So, of course, I took a picture.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like that's a blog post, a Twitter post, a Facebook post.
Oh, my God. Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, it is. I think there's a dream of many aspiring writers to be able to do that same kind of thing. Walk into a bookstore, see your book, not even so prominently displayed as you were fortunate enough to have, but just anywhere in there to be like, wow, I've made it.
Yeah. I'm a real author. I don't think that way, even though don't have that thought. If you write a book, you're a real author. If you publish that book and get paid for it, now you're a professional author.
Right.
I'd like to think that if you write, you're a writer. If you finish a book, you're an author. And if you sell that book, you're a professional author. And it's as simple as that. There's a lot of people who might have the demeaning attitude of, unless you're traditionally published, you're not a real author. And that's not the case. Not anymore.
No. Yeah. I don't know if there was probably never any real legitimacy to that claim, but certainly within the last few years, people like yourselves and many other authors have absolutely proven that traditional or indie, it almost doesn't matter to some degree. Like quality, amazing stories can come out of either, for sure.
You bet. I met one person and I said, "Oh, I'm an author." "Oh, really?" "Yeah." Or "Where do you sell your books?" I said, "Oh, you can find them on Amazon." So they pulled up my name, and I've got like 6 or 7 pages of books. And she's like, "Oh, you're like a real author." I said, "Yeah, just like one."
And here we pause the show for a minute while we have our mid-show matinee. So this is a brand new segment of the show, and it's my version of a brought to you by type of commercial. And that's because while I love interviewing authors, I am also an author myself. And I've got a new book coming out in the next couple of weeks called Soul Survivor. And if you are into thrillers, post-apocalyptic, mysteries, or sci-fi, you are going to love it. The quick blurb: alone in the wilderness, the last to quit wins $1 million. Finding shelter, water, and food is only the beginning because the wilderness is crawling with Kodiak brown bears. But when political tensions between the United States and China begin to boil over, the dangers of the island might be the least of their problems. It's the toughest challenge of their lives until it isn't. Survival isn't a game anymore. So you can go to my website to find out more about that. And now back to the interview. Yeah, I'm not one, but I'm extremely similar to one.
I'm just like a real author. And it's people are surprised because I think they've been led to believe that real authors aren't people that you run across in everyday life. Right. And this is what we're seeing with 20 books to 50K is that real authors are everyday people. They're people who just committed and spent the time and invested the mental capital to get those words into a book from the beginning to the end, and then have a final product and then edit and proofread and publish, get a cover, all that good stuff that you can do it. You can get there. So just like a real author.
Yeah, I think there is that in the wider public, there is that mythology of like the writer is like in the top room of a tower in a castle in Scotland drinking whiskey, like bleeding out the manuscript, But I totally agree. The indie movement has totally broadened that into something like what you're talking about. It's just real people making real effort and finding success
because they're writing good stories.
Yeah,
I think we hold ourselves to as high a standard as anyone else, especially as you progress within the profession. Like I said, my books from 2 years ago aren't as well written as the ones now, and I'm not saying the ones now are the best I can ever write, because I think I get better with each new sentence. I think it flows better, but practice, write every day.
Yeah, practice definitely makes better. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about that you had touched on earlier before, and it's kind of part of this aspect of the indie publishing movement bringing about just like this amazing wide open world of creativity and unique approaches. And just last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, I spoke with Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon, and of course they went over and we discussed that super cool train trip and writing on the trip that they did with I think Joanna Penn and Lindsay Baroker. And then they also now offer that to other authors in the community. It's just so cool. And that reminded me, and I'd love to get the backstory on it, that cruise liner Hades 7, which you had alluded to earlier, that was also like a really unique kind of cool approach to creating story. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, you bet. I committed to that at GaryCon 9, GaryCon in honor of Gary Gygax, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons. There's a conference or a convention every year in memory of his passing. So this year was 10 years since Gary passed away. So GaryCon X, GaryCon 10, and I committed to I'm going to run a game, and I will take how the players played and turn that into a fiction novel.
That's so cool.
And so they gave each of the characters personality, and the way the story turned out isn't how I would have originally wrote it if it was just me. And I think it turned out so much better. If you're into gaming, the leader of the party was a ranger and pretty powerful character. But he was trying to recruit labor. I created this condition, and he walked up to an obvious encounter. I had just drawn a card, but he was turned and didn't see that I drew an encounter card. And so some monsters showed up, right? And he tries to talk to them as if they're not a random monster encounter. So like a 3 hit point kobold punches him in the face and splits his lip. And then he drew very badly. And all of a sudden, they're in a scrum, these two characters. It was hilarious. And it's not something I ever would have thought to write. And then the other characters are just standing in the back watching, saying, hey, he's kicking your ass. And Ranger's like, he is not. And it made for really good humor within the story itself. So right. I took that, put it in there, wrote the whole story, which is it was easier to write that many words in that short time because I had lived this whole story with this group of characters. They didn't finish the thing, so I had to fictionalize and end the story on a reasonable note because it kind of ended about 3/4 of the way through because we ran out of time. And that's what I did. And I wrote that in a day and a half, sent it to my editor, got it back the next morning, sent it to the beta readers. They sent their feedback to me about 4 hours later, and I cleaned it up and hit publish.
Yeah, that is amazing. And how did you, at the very start of that, did you, I'm assuming basically you played the role of the game master. Did you just set up an environment and get it going? And then wherever they went from there was totally their choosing? Or did you have kind of signposts that you led them through?
Oh, actually, this is the Lost 77 Worlds gaming system from James M. Ward. I'm a big fan. Him and Stephen Lee. I got with those guys last year. And we talked about they did a Kickstarter to expand the game rules. And I said, hey, I'll do one of the modules. Well, come October, Steven's like, hey, you said you'd do one of the modules. I'm like, oh, my God, I did. So I actually wrote the module Rise of Juneau, which is set in Juneau, Alaska. So it made it. And also it's the 12th out of 12 modules because I'm like, I need some time. And I wrote the whole game module. So it wasn't like I didn't know this small world in which the players were playing because I had created the entirety of that scenario.
I see. Okay.
So I didn't try to drive them in any one direction, even though I said, here's the cover. You really have to go to the cruise ship if the cover is going to work. Because I had to have the cover ahead of time, of course, if I'm going to publish that quickly.
Yeah, that kind of turnaround. Well, that's very cool. And I love just hearing examples of writers in this new age just approaching writing and delivering stories in so many amazing ways. In fact, one of the things I suggested to Zach and Jay, so they do the Writers on the Train thing. And I was like, you know what? It's time to take it to the next level. Authors in the Amazon, right? I think that would be diametrically opposed to authors in Fairbanks, but it could still be a huge adventure.
It could be. It always every get together is an adventure.
Oh, great segue! Because I wanted to, and we had talked a little bit about this before the interview. But one of the things that you're hugely involved with, and I'm not totally sure, so maybe you could help clarify. Are you basically the wrangler for the 20 books to 50K convention in Vegas?
I am. It's Michael and I talked about this a couple years ago when we decided to do a convention because you can only do so much online. You cannot get the whole enchilada. You really need to meet face to face, and that was where we made a lot of our strides and steps up climbing the mountain of success was in person. So we said, hey, let's have a convention. I ran a couple polls on the 20 Books group, and all of a sudden, hey, we got a convention. So last year's 20 Books Vegas was phenomenally successful, and people at the end were telling me this is the best conference I've ever been to.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm like, man, this is the first one. This is the first one, not the first conference I've run. I've run gaming conventions before as well as some other conferences, but this was the first independent author conference. And it went off like clockwork. It had such a great group of volunteers and good working with a hotel that was very receptive and responsive. So everything went well. So we said, hey, well, let's do another one next year. Same thing. We'll do it at Samstown. We did look at some other places, but they just couldn't do for us what Samstown did. So we signed the contract. There we are. And when I agreed to this podcast, I didn't realize that today was the day we were going to open up registration for 20 Books Vegas, and it's been open for 3 hours, and we have 400 people already signed up.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you an email, or is it email? Like maybe where do I find the link for this? Because I'm interested. Absolutely.
20booksvegas.com.
Okay, I'll check it out after we finish the interview here. Well, I missed the first version of that convention last year, and it sounds like it was very cool. But being in Vegas, I was wondering whether like any magic acts or elaborately costumed dance routines.
We didn't do any of that. My goal last year was to get it in for less than $100. $99 conference fee for 3 days. That included meals, one meal, and it included snacks, both morning and afternoon sessions, unlimited coffee, tea, water, and 3 breakout rooms, and the full venue with presentations, a conference packet, a bunch of swag, like a notebook with 20 Books logo on it, and things like that for $100.
Yeah, that's wildly affordable. Did you guys, are the books Eve balanced on that? Did everything come out?
I did have to go around and ask for some donations, and people were very, very kind and generous. I also had a bunch of advertising that I ran. So this year, looking at the feedback, we went to $129.99, and we need no advertisers. We need no sponsors. That extra $30 will take care of all of that. We were also able to bump up the numbers from 400. Actually, I started 350, and we had 430 attend last year. Bump it up to 600, and we might even be able to go to 700 or 800.
Wow, that's very cool. So wait, should I jump offline here and make sure I get my email in so I can reserve the spot?
Oh no, you're cool. It looks like it has slowed down for the registration.
Okay.
But people aren't getting off work yet, so as soon as we're done, you can hop in. There's still a couple hundred seats left.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. I have heard, aside from the lack of magic acts and dance routines, I have heard from various authors that did attend nothing but the absolute top-notch best reviews of their experience there. So that's amazing.
That's good to hear. I really appreciate that. And since then, we did London back in January, and that conference we had 150 people, and that one went very, very well. I'm sorry that the space was we could only do theater-style seating. We couldn't do the tables, but the people were so kind, and the hotel with their damn little sandwiches, those things were great. So everybody ate to their heart's content of the little sandwiches, British style.
Very cool. One thing I wanted to ask you about that I had seen on your Amazon page, 2 things actually. One, you have like a little calendar of events at the bottom. How did you get that to show up?
On your author page, you can go to it. It says add events. So on Author Central.
Okay.
At Amazon, one of the options somewhere is add event.
In those events, I think I saw 20 Books Bali. Is that right?
Oh, Bali, baby. Bali. We're going to Bali in January. And that conference is more of a gathering of successful authors. And no, I'm not putting you must make and show me your pay stubs. No, I'm not doing any of that stupid crap. If you can afford Bali, and the conference fee there is $3,500. But that's for an all-inclusive. Your room will be paid for. Your meals, 3 meals a day for 3 days, will be all paid for you and your spouse. Because if you just took your spouse to a conference, you couldn't pay for anything for them and it be deductible.
Right. I see.
But you can always deduct a conference fee.
Yeah, I love the idea of it. It's like go do yoga in Hawaii for a week, and it's such a great idea if you're in that industry.
So that's what it is, and it's going to be a lot of high-end, high-powered authors hanging around. There's only going to be maybe 2 or 3 sessions, formal sessions a day, but generally it's going to be hanging out, talking about publishing, and we'll have some side agendas of, hey, I want to talk about this effort in audiobooks or something. So it'll be more of us chatting, talking, and networking, and less formal presentations, because the formal presentations are going to be, hey, I'm making $500,000. I want to make $1 million. Here's what I'm doing. What do you think? Kind of things. So
that sounds really awesome. We've kind of covered some of the more professional aspects of your career and what's been going on lately. And it's just sounds like you have a lot of amazing things going on. But I wanted to give listeners also a little bit of kind of information and look into your life just as Craig Martelle, not necessarily connected to Craig Martelle, the author, convention wrangler, etc. So, and one of the cool things that catches my eye, and we've mentioned it here, is you live in Fairbanks, Alaska, right?
We live in the subarctic. We live 150 miles from the Arctic Circle. It's generally cold, but winter isn't that bad for all 6 months of it. We have 1 month of spring, 1 month of fall, 3 months of summer, and then 6 months of winter. And yes, that's 1 month short, but that's usually more winter. Well,
I saw it's, it's clearly a unique, just the way you're describing it. And I think the imagination that people could have about it, it's a very unique place to live. One of the very cool things I saw about it is that you guys have annually a World Ice Art Championships. Have you ever been to that?
Oh, absolutely. It is a bash. You go down there and they have the ice sculptures, and the ice sculptures are just incredible, whether they're small and very artistic or behemoth structures. They do all of them. This year, the building, that's the main building on the where they do the ice art championship, caught fire and burnt down.
Oh, wow.
So like a week before the championship. So they still had it. They put up a temporary tent, but they canceled it this year as they're building rebuilding the building and getting everything ready. And then it'll return to Fairbanks next year. We have teams from all over Russia, China,
wow.
Japan, and of course, the United States.
That's very cool. And you say it's inside of a building, and I guess there isn't any need for air conditioning or anything like that, just the outside ambient.
No, that's the building where you warm up and you get snacks and stuff like that. All of the ice art is outside.
Oh, I see. Okay. And was there one, like the coolest one you've ever seen? What would that be?
There's one that is, you can go visit it out at Chena Hot Springs, where they have an ice museum.
Oh, wow.
Of an archer on the back of a horse. It's a neat piece of sculpture and artwork.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. There's another cool thing I saw about there. There seems to be a big sign from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and it's got like a digital temperature readout there. And then there's something called the 40 Below Club. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah, I have. It's you get your picture in front of that wearing like a bikini or a swimsuit. I have a picture of me outside. I just took it of my legs, my bare legs out when it was that cold. And we have a video we did of my wife throwing the boiling water out of our front door, and it turns into vapor and just turns into a cloud, right?
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And the magic temperature for that to happen is minus 40 Fahrenheit. And we did that right outside of our front door. It hasn't gotten that cold this year. It only got up to down to minus 35 this year. So generally, this has been a very warm winter, but we've gotten an awful lot of snow.
And then what's because I was just looking through a few of those pictures I saw, like negative 40, negative 45. What is an extreme limit to how cold it gets there?
Last year it got to minus 50. And so, of course, what we did, because school wasn't even delayed, so what we did is we went down and went out for lunch because everything was open. It's only minus 50. The coldest I personally have ever seen was minus 74.
Woo.
Well, that was on the North Slope. That's up in the Arctic, and that will kill you faster than you can believe. It'll kill you in 2 minutes.
Wow!
If you get out there and aren't ready, and even if you're ready for it, that will kill you in 2 minutes.
Do you have to have the whole parka thing, and is your face have to be covered, or is it kind of tucked inside of a deep hood?
I was working up there on the slope, and I got off of a bus, but my room was down on the end of the modules that they have for sleeping quarters. And so I didn't go in the main door. I walked down maybe 50 yards is all. And I was 30 seconds outside, and I didn't have my face covered. I did have my hood up, and I barely crawled inside, barely able to breathe because the air was so damn cold.
Wow.
And I thought at that point, I was outside for a total of 30 seconds, and I thought I was probably about 15 seconds from dying.
Wow.
because it was so damn cold, but I was trying to prove how tough I was. And you know what? Mother Nature's is got you beat hands down.
Yeah, that's a lesson that becomes clearer and clearer as the years go by in a person's life.
That's right. That's right. You're not going to win that battle.
Well, we're getting near the end of the show, and that can mean only one thing. Welcome to the Rorschach round, where we use ambiguously odd questions to delve deeper into the minds of these amazing authors. Let's get started. All right, so question 1. What's the number one thing that you haven't done yet that you would still love to do?
I don't understand why vanilla is white instead of the real color of a vanilla bean.
Like the dark brownish thing.
Yes.
I love how you angled that Rorschach answer.
That's,
right.
Hey, you threw the Rorschach at me, so.
All right, here we go. Next question. There's just a few more here. 20 books to $50K or 20 crooks to Medicaid?
I wait for my wife to leave. She travels a lot. She's a professor. And then I go to Papa Murphy's, which I already mentioned once in this interview.
Love that
and
place.
get a pizza because my wife can't eat pizza. She can't eat the gluten in the crust. Even though you can get a gluten-free crust, she can't eat the grains. She can't eat the cheese, and she can't eat the tomato sauce. So I wait for her to leave so I can get a pizza.
Right. Okay. And then I think this is the most Rorschach-y of the Rorschach tests I've ever done. Next question. Only 2-3 more. Arthurian Gambit or Arthurian Wombat?
42.
I love that answer. The universe and everything.
Have you had it explained to you why it's 42?
I don't think if I did, I don't remember.
In ASCII code, 42 is the asterisk. And the asterisk is a universal coding for anything you want it to be.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. That's like the wild card for this could mean anything.
Yes. So the answer to the universe, life, and everything is anything you want it to be.
I love that. 42. It's going in the show notes. All right. Last question here. Being from Fairbanks, this, is angled towards you. Driving snow or driving Miss Daisy?
I think driving toward a successful career that only you can define success.
All right. So it's something like if driving Miss Daisy was headed towards a 42, something like that. It sounds like
it's whatever, it's however you define it, make it a good one and reach for it and grab it with both hands.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Craig. It's been a super pleasure and a lot of fun getting to chat with you. Do you have any upcoming projects that folks out there should know about?
Oh, dude, you're killing me. I've got.
What about the most prominent of them, maybe?
I actually have a nonfiction book, Become a Successful Indie Author, that as we've been sitting here, a couple people have provided their feedback, some beta readers that graciously volunteered out of 20 books to 50K. So I'll make those adjustments, tweaks. I've got the cover being redone right now, and hopefully we'll have that within a couple days. And then we'll publish later this week. Next week, I've done the outline for my next fiction book. I've got 2 other fiction books in stages of writing that are due next and the one after next. So I have a lot of books I'll be publishing. I published 3 books in the last, what is today, the 19th. Since the 5th, I published 3 books. One was a collaboration, and the other 2 were both personal books, just my name on them. So I have a constant stream of production because my production manager, different hat, is kind of cracking the whip.
Wow, that's an admirably productive schedule. I think everybody out there, at least on the author side of things, not the fan side of things, probably wants to employ your production manager if he's available.
You bet, man.
And then if folks want to find out more about you and what you do, where would be good places to check?
Oh, you can check my webpage, craigmartelle.com, CraigMartelle.com, or just look me up on Amazon. You'll find all my books, series, collaborations with Michael and Scott Moon and some other great people, and hopefully find something you like.
Very cool. And there's a lot to choose from, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely go check it out, and we will put the relevant links there in the show notes. Craig, I just wanted to thank you one more time. That has been a lot of fun and extremely informative. So thank you so much.
Hey, thanks a lot, Will. You have a great day, man.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. Thank you so much to Craig for joining us today. That was a lot of fun and a lot of information. And if you're on the writing side of the listening spectrum today, I would highly recommend, and I am going to personally, already signed up in fact, since the show was recorded, going to check out the 20 Books Vegas convention coming up. I think it's this October, November, something like that. Anyway, I have heard nothing but great things about the previous iteration of it last year and am super excited to go check it out. And honestly, and as Craig said, I think he mentioned it's $140 or something. You can't get a professional conference learning experience for $140. Really. I mean, come on, that's insane. It's amazing. Thank you, Craig and Michael and all the folks that do hard work to make that happen for all the rest of us. And to check out any of the links mentioned there at the end of the show, you can go to the usual place in the show notes, and that is at www.williamoday.com/the number of the episode, which is 25. That's it for today. If you would like to be sure to never miss a show and always have them immediately available on your device of choice, you can subscribe by going to www.williamoday.com/iTunes. And if you enjoyed the show, I would so appreciate a rating and review on iTunes. They both help with store visibility, and they also let other listeners know if this show is something that they might be interested in checking out. And I've made it easy to access both of those by going to the same link on my website, www.williamoday.com/iTunes. That will have a link there that you can jump over to either subscribe and or maybe all three, rate and review the show. So I would so appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's it for now. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the OMG Book Show. You can find out more at www.williamoday.com.